We're looking forward to future technologies and growth in an ever-changing world. And we got next buzzword here, digital twins. Probably when you think of digital twins, you think of the usual things, right? Like clones of systems, machines, buildings, critical infrastructure even maybe. But who said we should stop there? The future definitely doesn't stop there. What would you say if I could tell you that you could clone yourself without cloning the flesh, blood, and bones? Intrigued? Well, this next speaker will definitely keep you intrigued. Futurist and researcher at the Blavatnik Center in Tel Aviv University, Dr. Roy Tsazana. Let's welcome him on the stage. Roy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. So, nice to meet you all. Let's see if things work. Yeah, perfect. Guys, I want to share with you my first moment of realization that AI is going to change everything, that it's going to enable us to create digital versions of ourselves and also to make some profit along the lines. So this is my first slide. It's a graph. That's how you separate the weak from the strong. The weak are living now because it's a graph, I know. So in this graph, what you actually see is that it used to take something like 20 years, even more than that, for AI to reach from zero to hero, from zero to the same level of an average human in certain characteristics like handwriting recognition, speech recognition, image recognition, and so on. And then in 2016, suddenly things changed. Suddenly, once we had large language models, it took 2 years for reading comprehension to get from zero to hero. It took 2 years to get, with language understanding, from zero to hero. And it just continued. In the last couple of years, we now have complex reasoning, we have code generation, math problem solving, general knowledge tests, and so on and so on. So AI is moving very, very quickly forward. But what does it mean, practically, in our lives? So I want to share a story with you. And it's quite a sad story, if I'm totally honest. Sad for me, funny for you, maybe. You see, I don't always know how to talk with human beings. I don't always know, just what are the right things to say. I'm sure I'm the only one in this audience who feels like that. That was a giggle. So, a few years ago, around 5 years ago, I opened the newspaper and I see an ad for a new diet. And I immediately say, oh my God, this is so great. And I go with this ad for a diet to who do I go? Guys, again, socially awkward, don't know how to speak correctly with people. So who do I go to with this new ad, with this ad about a diet? To my wife. And I tell her, hey, maybe you want to try this. And she said, no, Roy, this isn't how you're supposed to be talking with me. And I said, okay, you're absolutely right, I'm sorry. But 2 years ago, I again opened the newspaper, and again I see an ad about a diet. So who do I go to this time? It was 2 years ago. Who do I go to this time? I go to the source of all wisdom, which is ChatGPT. And I ask it, because I learned, I don't admit it to my wife, I said, I want to tell my wife about a new diet that's being advertised in the newspapers, but I'm concerned she'll be offended. So write a short letter suggesting to my wife that she should try this diet out. And it said, dear wife's name. It has something to it. It's still a work in progress. I recently came across an interesting new diet, been getting some attention. It seems to be a healthy approach. It's not about weight loss. It's about health. It's about balanced nutrition, about sustainable lifestyle. You're beautiful just as you are, and I love you unconditionally, and so on and so on and so on. So it tried to actually convince my wife. But then I tried something else, because I learned from my students that large language models like ChatGPT, they can give you different answers based on the personalities that you tell them to adopt. So just for you guys, I told ChatGPT 4.0 just 2 days ago. I gave it this letter, and I said, you are now a Latvian wife from Riga. Please respond to this letter. And it picked a neighborhood. I won't tell you which neighborhood it is, in Riga. And this is what it said. It started this way. What does it mean? Dear. Yes. And then it continued. And I actually translated it to English, for myself to understand, but I think it did quite well in response. And then I said, okay, take another neighborhood in Riga. I won't tell you which neighborhood it is, but it also started with a deer. And then it started with some very bold words. And then it went on. And then she went on. Even the photographer is laughing at this point. Now, yeah, that was a bit rude of her in the end there. Okay, come on, this is what you're taking picture of? This? Okay, but what's happening here? Basically, the AI adopted a certain personality, a personality of a certain woman in a certain neighborhood of Riga, and it responded in the right way. And there is good evidence that AI can successfully simulate humans, can successfully emulate certain human beings. For example, in one of the research papers that was released 3 years ago, they actually show that you can take GPT-3, the grandfather of ChatGPT, you can take GPT-3, you can tell it to adopt certain personalities, to act like a Republican or like a Democrat, and it will actually answer you in the same way that a Republican or a Democrat will. They show that if you can give it 11 traits out of 12, then it can guess what is the 12th trait at a very high level of accuracy. So we can actually simulate human beings, and then we can do market testing on them. And then we can do electrical voting testing on them. We can do security analysis on them. And that's what we're seeing right now, that companies and governments are starting to use cognitive digital twins, meaning digital twins that try to emulate our cognition. We see it happening in security, for example. In Israel, just a few months ago, we created a big simulation, a war game, where we tried to figure out how would people respond to a cyber attack on a hospital. And we created a bunch of digital twins who had to start coming up with answers about how they would respond. So, for example, on the first day of the attack, when they learned about what's happening, they said those things in English. I translated them to Latvian for you. And on the 5th day, when the event was over, they responded in the correct way. So they said, great job. But how can you trust that it won't happen again? And this kind of research actually informed the government on how better to prepare to cyber security events. On other fronts, we see people using cognitive digital twins for marketing campaigns. And allegedly, this isn't peer-reviewed research, but allegedly they improve the click-through rate and the conversion rate. So one of the companies, for example, that does this is called Persona. It's called Delve AI, and they're manufacturing synthetic persona. So you tell them, hey, I want to create a synthetic persona of a person from Latvia, and it creates for you Vladimir Karklins, 25 years old, from Riga, and then it manufactures all the traits, all the characteristics, all the personality traits, and so on, and so on, and so on. And by the way, this is so simple. I mean, you can just use ChatGPT to create an entire person profile, or you might say buyer profile, for Mr. Vladimir's Kraklin here, and ChatGPT will invent for you all of this stuff. Now, it's much better if you have the data for it, and then you can actually create a much better digital profile, a digital clone, digital twin, and then you can start testing things on him or on her. For example, I took this digital twin, Mr. Kraklin's, Vladimir's, and I input all the information about him into a custom GPT. So I ask him, how are you? And he says, alive, caffeinated, slightly annoyed at the noise outside. He's a hipster. He's 25 years old, UX designer, and with all the relevant character traits. It tells you what he likes most about Riga. It can tell you what he hates most about Riga. By the way, you can talk with Vladimir yourself if you take a picture of this QR code. I give him some kind of product, a product that it's likely that AI has never been asked about before. So I tell him, hey, I have this monocle. I wanted to sell it to you. how likely are you to buy it between 1 and 7? And he thinks, because there's no real thought there, but he thinks for a second, and then he replies that 2 out of 7, and he tells you why. So it tells you it's gimmicky, if it's something you find in a Halloween clearance bin. I respect good design, but this screams custom party satire. So he doesn't like it very much. I ask him, how would you improve the central market in Riga? And he gives me the answer of a 25 years old UX designer. Cut the kitsch, support the real local producers, do a design overhaul, and so on. I created another cognitive twin of Ilse. She's a 35 years old single mom, hasn't finished high school. She lives with her 2 twins at home, occasionally cleans for a living. And when I ask her questions, suddenly she answers just like, I think, Ilse would. What do you like? What do you hate? Drunk guys yelling at night, rude office workers. Asked her about the monocle. She almost threw me out of the room. Now, you see what we are doing here? Imagine that we can create thousands of digital twins like this, each of them based on actual data. What can we do with this? We can explore markets, entire markets, without actually surveying real people or by surveying very few people. Now, if you don't do this right, then you're going to have a catastrophe on your hand. For example, in this research, it's not really research, but something that has been published online, apparently by people who don't even know how to use digital twins. Because they said, hey, our digital twins, so you see in blue, we have the real respondents to a survey, and are they happy with their current role at work? Well, most of them are happy, but some of them aren't very happy. But what about the digital twins, the synthetic users? You see, they are all happy. They're all satisfied or strongly satisfied. Are you happy with your salary? Well, all the digital twins are happy with their salary. Are you happy with your work-life balance? All the digital twins are happy with their work-life balance. So are you happy? Are you going to recommend a certain product? Yes, we are. We are always happy. So this company that published this actually said, yeah, we can't trust digital twins. They're, it's like the Lego movie. Everything is perfect in our digital world. So you have to have good data, and you have to know how to ask the right questions, and how to create the digital twins just right. And I asked Ilse, are you happy about your salary? She's very unsatisfied. You need to know how to use these digital twins, or you're going to have a catastrophe on your hands. But if you do know how to use them, we're already starting to see the research and the results. We're starting to see universities and governments using digital twins all over the city to figure out how to adapt the city and how to reshape the city based on digital twins' needs. We see companies like the great NTT from Japan starting to use digital twins to figure out what meetings between people might look like, or how to create a personal assistant that will fit you, just you. We see them being used to understand elections ahead of time as well, as in a Stanford study where they simulated more than 1,000 individuals after having an interview, doing an automated interview with them, a 2 hours long audio interview, and then they asked them and then they created the digital twins, and it turns out that the digital twins are quite close to the real respondents in their views and mindsets and so on. And they also testify about their elections and how they are going to vote in the coming elections. This is a huge power, by the way, that we are giving companies and governments. And we need to start thinking how to regulate this, because there are regulations about privacy, but there are no regulations about simulating your customer and figuring out what he or she is going to do next. So this is the last minute. There is much to solve yet. There is data shortage about populations and individuals, and so we need more data. If you want to simulate your customers and understand them better, you need more data. The data is biased in many ways about many subsets of the population. But we are constantly improving digital twins. And in the future, I don't think it's a stretch to say that we'll have digital twins supporting every decision that companies are making. whenever you release a new product, you'll try to use it on digital twins first to figure out if it fits your clients, your customer base, or if it doesn't. And in the far future, some digital twins will even manage companies and make decisions for us. So we're doing research on this, and if you would like to use digital twins in your business too, please let us know, and good luck to you in your career and the rest of the day. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you, Dr. Susanna. Truly fascinating topic. It will be interesting to see what the digital twins would look like after the latest update of ChatGPT, because they saw the problem of them being too positive, too nice. So that's a very interesting topic to ponder, maybe over coffee with Dr. Susanna. Catch him while you can at Deep Tech Atelier. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, another fascinating talk in the books, makes you think, but we have real people still here in discussions. Maybe at some point we'll have a AI discussion at Deep Tech Atelier. Maybe, we'll see. But this year we are sticking to real people who will talk about the innovation climate in Europe, focusing on the Baltics and everything happening here right now. And we're going to do it in an interesting order. I'm going to call first out the panel and then the opening speaker who has an intro presentation, and they will afterwards talk about what they heard and build up on it. So I hope you help me welcome, first of all, the moderator for this panel. She's the Director General of Latvian Council of Science. Let's welcome on the stage Dr. Lauma Mojniece. Welcome, Lauma. Happy to see you. Whichever seat suits you, that's yours. All right. Next up, CEO of Exonicus Europe, Miss Liga Ellere. Liga, hello. Happy to see you. Welcome to DTech Atelier. All right. Next up, consultant for development of innovation ecosystem and international science, technology and innovation cooperation to the Ministry of Education and Science of Ukraine. Let's welcome on the stage Maria Krasnoshchuk. Welcome, Maria. Thank you for being with us here today. All right, next up, Ambassador at Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Finland, with nearly 40 years of diplomatic service, Mr. Harri Mäki-Reinikka. Welcome. Welcome, Harri. And let's welcome on the stage the opening presenter. Harri, maybe this, yeah. Ladies are wonderful, I understand. But let's welcome the opening speaker to our stage, who's going to talk on the role of defense in research and development, professor at the University College London, Mr. Rainer Kattel. Welcome, Rainer. The stage is all yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah, let me put the bowl of water here. Anyway, so good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're not too exhausted from the relentless talking and speeches, and hopefully we get to have some fun with the panel as well around these issues, because I don't think any of us really want to go to war, but since Ukraine in particular, but also seemingly more and more European countries are at war, we also have to ask, how do we utilize the war effort for our societies in a broader sense, through R&D and things like that. And of course, Europe, as you might know, a lot of the things that we have done in Europe over the last 50, 60, 70 years have been on purpose not to focus on military capabilities, not to focus on defense. As you might know, defense is one of the areas that Europe on purpose does not cooperate on, because we used to be really good at wars over centuries. We were very good at killing each other, and then we said, we stop it. We don't do any military cooperation almost at all. And now, of course, we have to turn it around. So, and this is something that's quite difficult, because you have 27 different countries needing to come together and start working on something that they haven't. But I think that there is a really interesting opportunity to look at the increased military expenditure, military R&D in particular, as a way to perhaps solve some of the more deep-lying European issues in research and science and innovation. And this is what we call the European paradox, that European countries are supposedly very good in science, but not so good at innovation. So already in 1995, you have this report from the European Commission where it is explained about this, that we are falling behind US, but also Japan and increasingly China, in being very good in science, that is in universities, publications, PhDs, but very little or much less innovation, much less technology development, much less in industrial development. And of course, this is what a lot of the discussion in 1990s was about, how we can get the industry to be more innovative through the science, and how we can get science into the industry. And this, of course, fitted very well countries like Latvia, Estonia, and other places, because we were also sort of coming out of the sort of the Soviet experience, and we were also very keen to have our scientific institutes working more closely with industry. So that's sort of the first sort of the version of European paradox in 1990s. Then I think increasingly European countries started to realize that actually this sort of the only focusing on competitiveness of the industry is actually not enough, because we are increasingly starting to lose what seems to be a sovereignty or autonomy, because we had to rely so much on external technologies, particularly in the digital space, and particularly in the digital platforms, Google's and others becoming dominant in our lives, not only in private lives, but also in public lives. So if you take a typical city in Europe, if it wants to understand the traffic patterns, it has to buy data from Google, which is kind of crazy because we all generate that data, right? But you have to still buy it. So this is the first sort of the reframing of this paradox, much more in the context of industrial policy, because we are falling behind US and increasingly China. We need to think about these industrial core capabilities that are really needed for our societies to function, from health to digital to producing, manufacturing stuff. And this is something that suited much better the larger European countries like Germany and France, but much less Latvians and Estonians, because we don't really know how to do industrial policy, and we are very small. How do you think about technological autonomy in the context of Latvia? Because we are importing a lot of technology anyway, so we can't ever be really autonomous. And that's already quite difficult paradox for these countries to handle. And of course, now we are facing even a new version of this reframing of the European paradox, because we have to rearm, because the erratic policy of Trump and what is happening around Ukraine, that there is no other way, that we have to start doing something that we haven't done for 60, 70 years really, is to collaborate and rearm, and particularly looking at R&D as well. And of course, there is a lot of discussion now. It's not only about money, but it's actually how do you use that money in a smart way, and not only in a smart way that it helps you on the battlefield and particularly helps Ukraine on the battlefield, but also to actually help our societies. Because when we talk about spending 5% of GDP on rearmament, that's lots of money. And it's very easy to spend that money on just sort of producing military technology, but without that having spillover effects to our societies. And this is what is really I think, in very much the question for the next decade probably is, how can we get out of the European paradox 2.0, which is how can we spend money on military in a way that actually helps our societies by creating jobs, by creating more sustainable technologies, by creating and helping us in health and other areas as well. And there is a quote from John Kenneth Galbraith, who was a wonderful economist in the 1970s, where he talked about the military-industrial complex of the Cold War, and he said that we know very well how to do good policy for Lockheed and Martin and all those military companies, but that doesn't mean we're spending money on art and culture. And I think this is exactly the challenge we are facing increasingly. If we have to spend more on military, where do we get the money? We got it from science and arts and culture and things like that, which is probably not the smart thing to do. And hence, you already see on the right-hand side for you how the military sort of the stocks of the defense contractors are doing incredibly well already. So money is already pouring into that sector, but that doesn't mean that it actually helps the economy or the society in a wider sense. On the other hand, we know from research, and there's probably too much detail on the slide here, that actually spending money on military is one thing, but spending money on defense and military R&D is a very good use of money. So the researchers have looked at, so if you take a $1 or €1 and put into any kind of activity, building bridges, building schools, or building high-tech military R&D. So the military R&D has the highest multiplier. So if you put €1 in, you get 50 or more euros back. It goes an extremely long way in terms of actually helping the economy and society. So as bad as wars are, if you use the money in wars for R&D, research and development, it's a very smart, if not the smartest use of your money, which is kind of a paradox. And maybe that's why we tend to have wars all the time. So here's something to think about. But we know that actually just using money to rearmament money to buy ammunition is probably not a good idea. By using that money for military R&D, like building drones and understanding how drones can be swarming through AI and things like that, is probably a very smart use because you can use that technology. And my colleague, of course, from UCL, Mariana Mazzucato, she wrote the famous book about entrepreneurial state, where it was all about how the military R&D of 1960s and 1970s led to what we now call the entire ecosystem around smart technology, smartphones, tablets, all of that. And of course, the dirty secret of Cold War on the Soviet Union side is that a lot of the success of Estonia, of course, relies on the similar kind of R&D spent in 1960s and 1970s, and that then led to Skypes and other wonderful digital startups. So there is a very, very long sort of the tail behind these kind of technologies. So it's a smart thing to do. So now, if you look at what is Europe doing now, as I said, EU on purpose does not collaborate on defense. There is no joint procurement. There is really no collaboration because on purpose. Remember, if you go back 200 years ago, we were like super good killing each other. You had like 200 countries in Germany, whatever, how many city-states in Italy, and everybody was warring all the time. So we on purpose said, none of that anymore. Now we have to do it again. So if you look at EU spending 17 times less on military R&D than US is doing. So US is doing extremely well in military R&D, has done over the last 100 years really, particularly the last 60 or 70 years, where US has increasingly spent lots of money in military R&D. So now when you think about what if EU spent 10 times more, let's say, instead of 4 billion euros, 40 billion euros in military R&D, what would we actually do with that money? Where would that money go? How do we use it? Because just throwing money at something is probably not a good way to solve that problem, because then we just buy lots of tanks and whatnot, which probably is not really smart. It's good on the battlefield, but for the society at large, it's not very smart way. So if you look at what is happening, and this is, you don't need to read it, I'm just sort of showing you that I have done the research, so you don't have to. So if you look, what are the key issues around European defense industry and defense R&D? I already mentioned it's extremely fragmented. Everybody does their own very small bits of R&D. It is also very poor sort of connection to industry. There is no real procurement pipeline, things like that, and there is no real joint procurement going on. And there is really no good governance. There is no common governance of EU defense or defense R&D. And we very often look at US. US is incredibly good at it. US has been incredibly good at it. All of the things in your smartphones comes out of defense expenditure. And so there's a lot of things that we now talk about. How can we copy the same things that US did? So the US, at the heart of US military R&D is an agency called DARPA, which is a defense R&D agency. It has a budget that is close to the entire budget of European military R&D, around 3 to 4 billion US. So EU 27 countries spend the same as one agency in US. It is extremely well linked to the procurement system. It is extremely well linked to the other science system. It's extremely well linked with the Department of Defense, Department of Justice. So it has actually only one purpose. Its purpose is to be not surprised. So that's the entire purpose of US military R&D expenditure, is not to be surprised. Nobody can be any better than us on military battlefield in terms of technology. So lots of money goes into not being surprised, rather than just buying armaments and buying huge planes or tanks or whatever, but actually not being able to be surprised. So when we learn from what can we do in EU, I think we need to do essentially build a network of multiple different agencies and programs that are all focused on high-risk, high-reward technologies. So they should be looking at, rather than just sort of rearming is of course also very important, but you have to put much more focus on technology and R&D, and really that has to be the key sort of primary objective, is to cultivate disruptive technologies and anticipate and neutralize the potential of future technological surprises, so that nobody can be better than us in terms of AI, security, all of those things. And it's all, in many ways, the science is all there, because a lot of that science actually still comes out of European universities. And if you look at what happens in the US university space, probably a lot of the very, very smart people in the US are looking to come to Europe. It's still a decent place to live, nice cities, and nobody's trying to fire you for saying something politically. But I think what is really interesting in US, the TARPA context, is that this is focused on what's called, one of my PhD students actually called it strategic amnesia. So it's because it's focused so much on high risk, so it doesn't have civil service contracts. Program managers have very short contracts of 2 or 3 years because they are focused on one technology and on disrupting through that technology. So it's on purpose not to remember what we did 5 years ago because we want to always relentlessly look forward rather than look backwards. So this is something that is not very useful to public sector otherwise, but in this context, in defense R&D context, it's very useful. And again, as I said, in the US context, the defense R&D is very much surrounded by ecosystem of procurement, joint procurement. So if somebody in a TARPA, let's say in a autonomous vehicles technology prizes, that was then procured through military. If there is something facial recognition technology, that was procured to Department of Defense and other places like that. There was also there has always been a very strong support for making contracts with industry, Department of Justice rather than TARPA itself, and things like that. So the entire ecosystem around those programs and agencies, that works really well. I think TARPA is very good at using challenges. So for sort of the entire program around autonomous vehicles came out of a challenge. Can somebody make an autonomous vehicle? That technology. But this functions as a way to bring together lots of different actors to raise awareness around specific technologies, but also signal that this is something that we are interested in as a technology, which means in 5 years, 7 years, there will be huge contracts coming up. We will be procuring this technology. So if you are a contractor, you can start to get ready, you can start to be there in that marketplace. So TARPA is essentially helping to create markets for those new technologies. It's not only a technology, but it's also the market that follows. And of course, in the European case, one of the problems we have is we have dual-use limitations. So civilian technology and the other way around, military technology cannot be used in civilian sector, which is probably something that we have to change. And of course, I think on the European level, what is really important is to have coherence, not only in terms of defense R&D and defense industry and defense procurement, but also how does our defense expenditure align with our regional policy, cohesion policy. So EU is still very unequal. So how do we align these things? How do we align it with twin transitions in terms of sustainability and digital? So can we spend the military R&D in a way that has also useful use in civilian life in terms of sustainable fuels, for instance, in use of how do we use drones in civilian life later on, and things like that. So there's higher level political coherence is something that is incredibly important as well. So I leave it here with a few thoughts. Hopefully this was helpful for the debate, and I see that I have 15 seconds to spare, so thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you very much, Rainer, and welcome everyone to this panel. And welcome all the panelists. Thank you for joining. And we will. So this panel is called "Innovating Under Pressure: Rethinking Growth in this changing geopolitics and the situations we repeatedly find ourselves in." So we will talk about. First of all, the European paradox, which Rainer already mentioned, and address Europe's shortcomings in exploiting its research results economically. And without further ado, I will jump right into the questions. And Rainer, I will not give you a moment to catch your breath, so I'm going straight for you. And as one possible remedy, you suggest high-risk, high-reward R&D programs. And this strategic amnesia, which is quite a nice term, I would say, as a necessary cultural shift. But how feasible do you think it is in a European context where accountability and risk aversion are deeply embedded in our public institutions?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And as I said, not only is the European Union in many ways, but also our modern governments, modern states, are created to avoid bad things from happening, to avoid violence, to avoid war, to avoid diseases. That's what we do in government. We avoid stuff from happening. So actually, that's why you need to build specific organizations that are there to take those risks, but also that are in a way shielded from those risks because people have a very short contract. So you're not worried about what happens after me, really, and you can take more of the risk. And I think that during the times we are in, it's a really unfortunately, good window of opportunity to be innovative on the European level as well and take the risk. Because if Trump is serious, as we see he is the only thing he's serious about is sort of pulling out of NATO, probably. So that means that we just need to take more risks. And but I think that also covers politically, even if those risks don't pay off as well as they could, there's still sort of a political raison d'etre to do it. And as we see also in the case of Germany, there's a lot of changes are happening, like a constitutional change around fiscal rules, which, 3 months ago was impossible, and now it is possible. So I think it's using that window of opportunity to create new, bold institutions is something that I think is possible.
Yeah, thank you. And some countries are still contemplating of how to do this better. Ukraine had to do that very rapidly. So Maria, I'm going to ask you a question. So you had to really adapt your innovation system in a very fast pace and reshape it in response to war. So what would you say have been the most critical government decisions to enable this transformation?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to this, without any words, important discussion. And I will go through some notes to be sure that I will get you acquainted with all the data. So, regarding the necessary steps that can be implemented, that's the risky, tolerant policy making. We are trying to establish an experimental project before establishing the policy in a full country and in a full economy. And the second, that's the regulation. Since in general, in innovation market, the government stands not as a catalysator of innovation, they stand as a barrier between two deals parties. And with that, what are we implementing by recognizing that the higher bureaucracy can stop the innovation rapidly? We implement several fast-track measures. First, we change the legislation for the drone industry. We reduce VAT while importing the drone itself and the equipment for production. We minimize the specification for those who are interested in going to the battlefield, and we minimize the time when from creating an innovation and presenting in the real conditions. We open the doors for other countries to get in and to test their products on Ukrainian real conditions on the battlefield. And with that, what types of innovation we were able to manage? First, we create the first history marine drones fleet. The second, we use the drones for different types as those who are investigating and as those who are helping to change the military, and every drone saves one life, and every drone change those who are on the battlefield with the technology. That's one of the best features. And with all that measures, it was shown the efficiency on the drone industry, and with that, it was shared all the tax and all the policy preferences were shared to the whole market and to the other weapon equipment. Another example, we have launched a defense tech cluster, Brave One. That's the one entry point for all stakeholders who are interested in working with Ukrainian defense ecosystem, especially with Miltech ecosystem. And with that, as of now, more than with that, as of now, Brave One helped to close the innovation needs within the Miltech sector in general. And shortly, what else have we changed? We changed the priorities. Before the war, we, as those who respect the academic freedom, have more than 540 priorities, and our scientists were able to apply for funding freely within this a wide range of priorities. After the war, we focused on 7 lines, and it changed the full funding ecosystem, governmental funding. For example, within the government order, we start to collect the exact specification from 10 ministries and to funding only those solutions that can be implemented really rapidly and that can change the situation as of now rapidly. And I suppose that the national prioritization is one of the most efficient measures we have made.
That's quite impressive, I would say. 540 priorities, which doesn't sound like priorities, to be honest. But going down from that number to 7, I think that's quite an impressive achievement, and it really shows how you can actually concentrate resources and allocate them in a purposeful way and to achieve critical mass, serious critical mass. Okay, and then I would like to ask Liga, who is a representative from the industrial side. Your company has been involved in defense industry since the beginning, so you have thought about all these things already since establishing the company, but how has the shifting security environment changed the outlook on your strategic decisions and business models and so on? And maybe a short comment on what the company is about
Sure. Thank you, Lama. Yes, indeed, Exonicus has been in the market for a while now, more than 7 years, and from the day of the establishment, the company has been a defense industry sector player. So our main segment is military customers. And what we do, we create medical simulations in extended reality for those who need to train how to save lives, in a simple word. So we offer a trauma simulator that runs in a single XR headset, providing digital patients, environment, and equipment needed to prepare users regular combats up to the military medics to prepare them in giving first aid in pre-hospital settings, in pre-hospital circumstances. So for Exonicus, the presence of the war in Europe hasn't changed the strategic outlook. It has validated it. And so in our case, battlefield ready, it's not a buzzword to market our product, but actually it is a fact. So we have a matured product that is ready for the deployment. What has changed is urgency and demand. More governments and institutions in Europe finally are realizing that resilience starts with preparedness. And technology must enable this at the scale. Specifically in the medical training, modern crisis, war, they demand agile, cost-effective, immersive, and scalable tools to prepare people to give first aid. And XR is a game changer, not only in the medical training, but in the training as such in this. So traditional simulation and training methods cannot meet this demand alone anymore. So in our case, we were there before the war, but the urgency and demand finally is here, so we are ready. Another shift comes from the growing need for interoperability across the allied nations. In our case, it means that we had to put more focus on technical integrations with cross-border platforms, technical platforms, tools for simulation and training. Accordingly, the business model, in case of this kind of cross-border technology platforms, the business model changes, of course, too, because it's no longer about selling one tool to one buyer. It's actually being a part of the shared capability with a shared mission. But the last, but definitely not the least, shift we feel and we use is thanks to experience shared by Ukraine, we are able now to deliver a solution that is based on the real battlefield experience. Not only on the training curriculums, doctrines existing already across NATO, European Union, but really product that is based on the very, very specific and current and needs of the modern battlefield. So these would be the three areas for us.
Thank you. So you mentioned cross-border platforms, cross-border collaborations, and Harry, this is where I come to you. You have extensive diplomatic and foreign policy experience. So, of course, we all understand that we need to strengthen Europe's security-related innovation ecosystem. So, where do you see what do you see is the role of international collaboration playing here?
Thank you for that question. So, first of all, nice to be here in Riga. I have been here first time 40 years ago, but last time 10 years ago, and around that. Riga is a wonderful place, and actually I remember from Latvia that Latvia has been technologically very well advanced country already before the Second World War. I was told that even the Leica cameras, the small spy cameras, were produced here in Riga.
Yes, we're quite proud of that.
Yeah, but concerning how to strengthen the innovation ecosystem, so I guess that quite a lot of things have been already said here during the 2 days. But of course, it's about collaboration, cooperation. It's about trust for citizens' trust to the society and to the state. It's very important. Competitiveness, and it's very important that we speak about European strategic autonomy, but also in the context of the transatlantic cooperation and NATO. In EU, I would like to point out the European Defence Fund and permanent structured cooperation. For example, in NATO, all kind of programs and partnerships. And of course, it's important that the research and development in defense sector, all these are more trying to find more synergies together. I would like to say that at the moment, I think in concrete terms, very much about rare earth or critical minerals or supply chain in semiconductors, for example. Certainly very important to guarantee that we are always having those, so because they are basis for many issues when we are speaking about innovation ecosystem. But also we have seen that basically in the defense field, the traditional operators, when they have the procurement processes, those are long and complex. And when we have more and more, actually new dual-use companies are established like mushrooms in the rain. Regionally, I have seen tens or hundreds in Finland, for example, in many regions. Those small companies, they find that actually this can be applied in the battlefield even, or for defense, and there are a lot of companies, but there is something lacking, and first of all, it has to be later on more systematic, but also the best one should be somehow supported in a way that they are not losing the sight in this complex bureaucratic system how to put the product or how to get the support and how to put the products to the markets. And when we are speaking about defense, I would like to say that actually it's not so much about regulation, and that's good that EU is simplifying systems. Even NATO is having a simplification process in the procurement. But actually it's not even about the markets. In Europe we can say that it's about European defense and how to put the new products, how to use those, and especially now in Ukraine case in the battlefield. Very important. It's about European defense also. And of course in other terms, general terms, so we have a lot of things to do at the European level. in simplification, but also to think in a bit different way as before.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And I think from the previous answers, we can see that there is the drive, necessity, and willingness, and also the competence. But the thing is that even in times of crisis, we cannot forget about other critical areas that we still have to maintain, and we have to find a balance on this. So, Rainer, I would again like to return to you. So in your presentation, you mentioned the need to institute a series of recurring annual defense R&D challenges and try to find a way how to forge connections between defense innovations, innovation priorities, and also broader societal agendas such as twin green and digital transitions, regional cohesion, and so that these would all overarch European national missions. So what would you say, what actors should lead this effort? Governments, EU bodies, public-private consortia?
It's probably a combination. I think it all comes down to collaboration, I think, as Harry said. So I think you want to have some of the challenges being on a very high level in the European sense, because that provides the visibility, of course, and it provides also opportunity for politicians to get photo ops and together with technologists and scientists and also companies as well. But I think you want to have multiple levels. You want to have a national level, you want to have regional level, because some of the challenges need to be really focused not only in terms of technologies, but also in terms of services. I think you also heard here from Exonicus, which is around medical services, for instance. So, but how do you use these kind of new R&D developments for other areas, regional growth and public services, like looking at healthcare, welfare state, all of those things need to be woven into these kind of discussions rather than just using it for purely battlefield only. I think that's sort of where the challenges can really be working for you, because challenges are, they're not that much money is being spent on them, but more effort goes into thinking how do we combine those different areas, how do we bring actors together, and you can so use on different levels. And I would be very boldly experimental here, because it's not about money, but it's actually effort to bring people together and focus them on not only pure military needs, but also broader needs from sustainability to public services and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you mentioned Exonicus, and Liga was actually the one who I wanted to address next, in the sense that and Harry mentioned that dual-use tech companies are popping up like mushrooms, and we have been talking about dual-use tech quite for some time already. But what would you say? How all the initiatives towards that, how they have impacted your company and the overall outlook, and how do you see? Like what more could you bring to the table to the medical applications in your sense? So we have been talking about the military applications, but what about the medical aspect? So is there something that you can bridge the other way around, not from the medical use, medical applications to military, but the other way around? How are there any spillovers that can happen? In this sense.
Yeah, I get. Actually, we have an excellent use case exactly in this. As I said, we started purely as a military segment-oriented company. So, and it's still our core competency, really, to develop training tools for the military medical training. However, again, based on experience we got from Ukraine, we realized that from their experience that these are not only the military personnel who need to know basics of the tactical medical care. The real situation showed that the first responders, like police, firefighters, also the border guards, it's crucial for them actually to also to know the tactical medical care aspect. So they usually get the regular first aid training course, but it needed to be it needed a additional layer for the tactical medical knowledge. So we expanded our product to that can be used to the civilian sector, first responders, with a tactical medical care. And after that, we realized, and we answered actually also to the demand from the civilian sector, from hospitals, from universities. They say, hey, okay, you do the military stuff, but what about the regular first aid training in a various levels? So actually, based on this demand, based on the know-how, actually initially developed through the military medical care, now we are launching in later this summer a purely civilian product that will be to the first responders in hospitals, academic institutions, local municipalities, outside of the military context. So this is a small but very practical use case, how we actually, because of this geopolitical shift, we shifted also or expanded actually our product offer. So from purely military dual to the purely civilian. So.
I think it's a very important thing to remember that this works both ways. So
exactly.
It's not only from civilian to military, but it can really, and I think Rainer emphasized this also in his presentation, that this is really the case of some disruptive innovations that sometimes it can work the other way around. And Harry, going back again to you. So do you think, do you feel that the signals from investors and businesses in the region, what can you say about their appetite to engage in dual use and defense-oriented innovation? So obviously we can see that there is the demand here, but is it purely related to more military tech, or also what Liga mentioned, that there is a huge interest also how to convert it into the civilian sectors?
So I think the money matters, of course, and support given. So it's very important that dual-use companies, newly established dual-use companies, will get money if they are considered to be producing important products. I think in Europe it's very important to look at what Germany is doing. This huge package, infrastructure package, is important also in the field of defense, but also in everywhere. But of course we know that in USA the markets and money and the best products, most of the best products are made there. And I don't know, but you, Professor, you mentioned that don't copy, but you have to somehow accept the reality and work on that. And I think that is the way what is going to happen. But in this context, I would like to mention, of course, I'm, as a diplomat, advocate of even deeper integration. And I mentioned the strategic autonomy and economic security is really needed. Finland is a country where we have a model of comprehensive security. And last year, we heard about different reports. Mario Draghi's report and Enrico Letta's report about, the first one was about competitivity and the other one about single market. But also the former Finnish president Sauli Niinistö, he proposed in November this comprehensive security model to the European Union. I think that it's worth of everybody to study it carefully, because this will also improve European attractiveness, agility, and our more, let's say, product-oriented approach in our society. Actually, it's an approach concerning whole of society. It's also engagement by whole society against wide range of threats. And this model of integration, integrating collaboration among public authorities, businesses, organizations, and citizens, it's ensuring preparedness and response capacity under all circumstances. This is the way what we have to do also I think this spring we have seen some kind of continuation or even implementation already for this, as the EU white paper was published a month ago, and also this Rearm Europe project. And there is in Sauli Niinistö's paper also a proposal that at least 20% of EU budget should be focused to the comprehensive security. Actually, it's a big amount if we compare it to the environmental budget, what should be, the goal should be 30%. So there are a lot of things to be done, possibilities.
But do you think, you said there are more things to be done. Are there any like super critical things that should be done very soon, or more in long term?
I think in this situation we should do our utmost. I mentioned already the simplification processes of these bureaucratic procurement processes, but also politically. And perhaps in this context, I also would like to mention the regional cooperation between Nordic countries and Nordic and Baltic countries. And when you have been speaking and we have been speaking about artificial intelligence, I would like to say I have a feeling, perhaps even it's not finalized view, but that this artificial intelligence is going to be an equalizer between small and big countries, and also regionally. And it is also an equalizer between the companies, and the small companies can be much more efficient, agile, and productive in using it in the right way.
And Maria, again, back to you. So I think we have of course, we do understand the extreme pressure that you have been that has been impacting your innovation capabilities, and the shifts you already explained all different kind of cross-cutting mechanisms that your government had to take. But please tell me more about the process of innovation policy and the role of innovation in all of this. And so, what lessons could Europe learn when we speak about this? Like you have been hearing what we have to say and what we have identified as common issues. But what would you say? What would be the most crucial things that we should take away from Ukraine's experience so far, and how has your innovation policy have provided different kind of aid and support in that?
Yeah, innovation, it's not something about fun. Innovation, it's a solid mechanism for the sustainable growth of the economy. And that's already here, that's the future that is maintaining ongoingly. And also, innovation, it's a great mechanism to save administration resources. As you may know, Ukraine has built one of the most efficient e-governmental system. We were able to get from 102nd position in 2008 on innovation ecosystem, especially within the field of digitalization and digital transformation, to the 5th. As of now, this year, we are the 5th in the world on digital transformation, according to the United Nations HD rating. And how was it made? In fact, we are just trying to make the government user-friendly and to work with limited resources that we don't have the time, as well as people, as well as money. And all these resources can be just used in more economy and more efficient way, just by changing it to the digital decisions. So the digital transformation, that's the great portion that we can share experience on. And also, I'd like to highlight that Ukraine already contributing to the defense system by providing a great space for not a great, but providing a real condition for checking the innovation inventors on the real battlefield, and to speed the testing, meant to make it grow faster within the miltech sector. What other? Also, our militarian and the whole miltech sector, they gained a big experience that, as of now, already shared with European Union countries. For example, there are a couple of programs where Ukrainian specialists move to other regions of Europe, or invite those specialists from Europe to visit Ukraine and to gain experience from our side. And also, I'd like to emphasize that this continuous pressure laid the fundament for Ukrainian new innovation strategy that's called Win-Win, and it will be implemented until 2030. And what it built the roadmaps for 14 main and leading tech sectors, which in upcoming 5 years will be the leaders and will grow the technology sector mostly and speedily. So what is there on Win-Win? We focused on creating specialized innovation platform in priority sectors, and every sector have their special sectoral strategy, how it will be implemented during upcoming years. Removing regulatory barriers, I have already mentioned about it, but we really make a big focus on the regulation. And to remove everything that slows the operational processes, and building direct connections between government, business, and the developers to help them to be sure who they should contact with and how they should approach to go to the market and to implement the innovative solutions speedily and straightly.
So I try to summarize the main, keywords from our discussion, and I would say that the main takeaways are fast, flexible decision-making matters, taking risks matters and helps, mutual trust is essential, and I mean not just between governments, countries, but sectors, the society, and so on. Unfortunately, times of crisis drive innovation. This is something to think about, because maybe we can try to be more innovative without crisis situations. But yes, that's definitely one takeaway. And I would say the overarching theme is that research matters. So investments in research and investments in defense, they should not be some separate things. They should be something that's combined. So with that, I would like to conclude this panel. Thank you to all the panelists, and thank you for all the listeners.
And thank you to Lama for the excellent moderation. Thank you very much.